Hey everyone, my name's Chad. This is part 2 of the step-by-step guide for CloudOffice deployments. This is the video specific to Google Cloud. You should have a Google Cloud account already, and you should have gone through the prerequisites video or the first part of the CloudOffice deployment videos. I'm at the GitHub page, and I've got PowerShell open. Scroll up to the GCP or Google folder, and then scroll down to the Google specific instructions. We need to open Windows Subsystem Linux and cd to our home directory. The first few steps relate to installing Google Cloud software. The first one is the source of the software. I'll paste that in with a right click. It does ask for my sudo password. That's the password we set up when we set up Windows Subsystem Linux in the previous video. Next, we install some software. Copy, right click to paste. Give that just a moment to run. Then we add the key for the software. And then finally, we install the Google Cloud software. Give this another moment to run. I'll be back when it's done. Okay, that did take a little bit, but it's done. We'll now run the Gcloud Init command. This is going to authorize our console in Windows Subsystem Linux access to our Google Cloud account. We must log in to continue. I'll hit enter for Y. We need to go to this link in our browser. You should already be signed into your Google Cloud account in the browser. That'll speed things up a little bit. You may be prompted like this. I'll click on my account, and then I'll click allow. Copy the code and paste it in. I'm logged in. I have projects already, so I'll pick one. If you don't have a project, you can create one, that's fine. It doesn't really matter right now. Okay, and it looks like I got some additional output here that shows we are logged in. There is an additional step for authentication. Copy this next command, paste it in, and we have another link to follow, and we'll need to input another verification code. I'll reuse this tab, paste it in, select the same account, allow, copy the code, right click to paste. Note our billing ID. This is important. We'll need this when we customize our variables. I have my billing ID. And then also to verify that the setup worked and that we're authenticated, plus to confirm which account we're using, paste in this command, and you'll see the email address there. We'll need to reference that as well. So we'll need both this value for billing and the email address when we customize our variables. And that's the next step. We need to cd or change directory to the Google Cloud specific directory. This is part of the git clone that we ran in the previous video. And then we need to go to the same directory in Windows File Explorer. And we do that by copying this address or path, open File Explorer, and paste the address into the address bar. I will note that its reference is Chad in the top here. That may or may not be visible. You'll need to change Chad to your Windows Subsystem Linux username. If you're not sure what that is, type in who am I, and there's mine. So I'll again paste that in, change Chad if you need to, and then hit enter. We'll be editing this file gcp.tfvars. Double click it. You may be prompted to pick an application to open it in. Notepad is fine. I've already done that. It didn't ask me again. And then we can scroll down. We're going to edit this file and save it, but you can look at the variables further down in the README. The first variable is the admin password. This is the password for the Nextcloud admin, presumably you, to log in to the Nextcloud web UI. The username is ncadmin. I suggest, we're going to set a couple passwords here. I suggest making them all unique, all complex. For the tutorial, I'll make it something simple. I'm going to delete this project when we're done. I'll set it to change me 1A. The DB password and the OO password are only Office password. These are what Nextcloud, the application, uses to talk to the database and only Office. You don't necessarily need to remember these, though I would suggest keeping a copy of this entire document once we're done, make a copy of it and store it somewhere safe if you ever need to reference it for troubleshooting or something like that later. So I'll set these to change me 2A and change me 3A. They should all be unique. That's good practice. We also need our SSH key. We created the SSH key pair, a private key and a public key, in the previous video. We need the public key. You can use this cat command to copy it or display it. To copy from PowerShell, highlight and then right click. Now it's on my clipboard, and then in between the quotes, I'll paste it in. Next is Management CIDR. This is the network granted access to your Nextcloud instance. You can set it either to a single IP address, maybe your home IP address if you're deploying this from home and you only want to be able to access it from home, or you could set it worldwide. I'm going to set mine to worldwide. This does expose the services to the internet, but you would need either the admin password or the SSH private key to use either the web UI or to SSH to the instance. So it is still secure, but keep that in mind. If you wanted to lock it down to only your home network, you could set this to your home IP address. Though keep in mind if your IP address changes, often if you've got a dynamic IP from your internet service provider, or you want to use the service when you're mobile on your cell phone, that's probably not going to work. There certainly are ways to get it set up that way, but not here. My suggestion is to set it to 0.0.0.0/0. That's what I'll do, and open it up to worldwide access. But keep that password and SSH key safe. Next, we need the two values that we got in the earlier commands we just ran, the billing account and the GCP user. Let me scroll up just a little bit here. There's my billing account. Again, highlight and then right click to copy, paste it between the quotes, and the username, do the same thing. It's probably an email address. Next, the GCP, those are all the things that you must set. But next, there are some uncommon variables and very uncommon variables, and we'll go over a few of those. GCP Region and Zone, that's fairly self-explanatory. This explains where you're deploying the services in Google Cloud. Do some research on the zones that are available, the regions that are available and their associated zones. There really is no advantage to using US East 1. That's just closest to me. Maybe it is closest to you as well. So do some research on which region is closest to you and set that here. We also need to set the image. So just like we set up Ubuntu for Windows Subsystem Linux on our machine, we're going to be using Ubuntu in the cloud to run our Docker containers. Occasionally, and you only need to set this once, but occasionally Ubuntu or Canonical, the makers of Ubuntu, will upload a new base version of Ubuntu to Google Cloud, and we can set that now. It's a good idea. There's a command here. I'm going to copy this command, and it will show me the latest version in Google Cloud. And there it is. And if you notice, there's kind of a date at the end, 2021, January 19th. And I'll replace the one that was included in the project, which was 2020, October 14th. This specifies the Ubuntu official image, so keep that. Next is the NC prefix. This is like a labeling prefix. You could set it to Nextcloud or CloudOffice, NC if you wanted to keep it short. It doesn't really need to be changed, but keep that in mind. There's also, this is fairly important, though I've set it to very uncommon, because it's set to the minimum default. G1-small is about 1.6 gigs of RAM. That is just about the smallest machine available in Google Cloud that will still run the Nextcloud service and only Office. If you're deploying this as a single user and this simply is to host your own files, you're not doing anything crazy with it, this will probably work just fine. It is near the minimum requirements. In fact, maybe even their suggested minimums that you see posted for Nextcloud are a little bit higher than what this provides. Though in my experience, it works. You're not going to get stellar performance out of it. It's not going to be super snappy. But if you're just storing files in Google Cloud, this should work just fine. If you're going to use this service with multiple users, or you plan on experimenting a bit and doing maybe some more intensive work, it might be worthwhile to upgrade it to a slightly larger size. There's also the disk gigabytes. You could set this higher. Keep in mind that CloudOffice comes with object storage, which is significantly cheaper than disk storage. So I would suggest leaving this fairly small, 30 gigs seems fine and fairly small, and then using the object storage. I'll show that once we've deployed the service. And you can use object storage to store all your files, especially your larger files, and then leave the disk fairly small. The other settings I wouldn't suggest changing unless you plan on tinkering quite a bit more and plan on using the instance that you deploy for more than one service. For example, the CIDR 10.10.13.0/24, that's the network we set up in Google Cloud. If you have other services in Google Cloud already and they use that network, you may need to change this, and you would also change this as well, this value for the instance itself. I don't have any other services. I'm going to keep it the same. There's also the web port and the only office port. You don't necessarily need to know the only office port, but you could change it if you want to. It's transparent and it's behind the scenes. The web port, though, is the port that you'll access Nextcloud on. 443 is the HTTPS port by default. And then the Docker network and Docker container IP addresses. Again, if you have something that's going to overlap these on the instance when you deploy it, you could change them. Because this is going to be a Nextcloud only instance that I deploy, there's nothing else running on it other than this service. I'm not going to make any changes. And that about wraps it up for the variables. I'm going to save this file. Again, you may want to keep a copy of this just so you know what you used when you deployed the service. And I'll scroll back up to the instructions. So we've edited the file in Notepad and saved it. I'm going to close it out. And we're going to deploy now. So I will cd to the Google Cloud directory. We're already there, but this is a step to ensure we're in the right spot. And I'll run Terraform Init. This will tell Terraform to download any Google or other specific code that it needs to deploy the resources. That was pretty quick. And then we'll run Terraform Apply. This is where the magic really happens. Terraform will take the code included with CloudOffice, plus the customized variables file that we just edited, and use the credentials that we authenticated with to build a plan and then allow us to deploy our resources automatically in Google Cloud. So I will paste that in. We'll get output that shows us all of the resources that Terraform will create in Google Cloud. Things like, if I scroll up here, a secret password. You can scroll up and look through all those, quite a few of them there. I'll hit yes, and this will tell Terraform to begin building those resources in Google Cloud. This will take a little bit. It's not instantaneous. Be patient. It depends entirely on how quickly Google can deploy all of those resources in the region that you chose. We will get some output in green color when it's done. Okay, Terraform is done. We have some output. I do suggest saving this, maybe put it in a notepad and keep it somewhere safe. It has instructions on how to access your instance and then also how to update the containers, and we'll go through that in just a bit. I don't know if the instance is done setting itself up yet. Keep in mind, Terraform deploys the resources in the cloud, and then Ansible, and let me show that in the instructions. If I go back to the front page of CloudOffice, you can see that in the diagram. This hexagon here, Terraform plus Ansible automation. Terraform builds out all the resources like the bucket, the firewall rules, the instance itself, and then Ansible, spawned from Terraform, will run and install the Docker containers, the software needed for Docker, and then any other configurations that are needed. And we can watch that happen. We go back down to the instructions. After deploy, note the outputs from Terraform, and then wait for the virtual machine to become ready. Ansible will set up the services for us. If you want to watch the setup happen, we can SSH to the instance and then tail a log. So I will copy this SSH command. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes, this happens because this is the first time we're connecting to the instance. And then I will tail this file, copy and paste. If this file doesn't exist yet, that's okay. That's because Ansible is still installing. Even before Ansible gets started, it has to be installed. The process is all automatic. Just give it some time, and we can see that the instance is still being set up. So just like we had to wait a little bit for Terraform to build out all the resources, we need to do the same thing for Ansible, where we wait just a bit, and you can see it's moving along here. But we just wait a little bit for Ansible to configure everything on the machine. We'll also get some output at the very end for that. It'll be a play recap, and I'll be back for that when it's done. We have the play recap from Ansible, and the most important bit is failed equals 0. That shows that none of the steps it went through failed, and everything is good to go. We have our Nextcloud instance running now. I'm going to Control-C out of the tail, and then exit to exit the instance. That Terraform output, if you didn't save it, and I suggest you do, you can get it again. If you're in the CloudOffice/GCP directory, I'll hit enter, and there you go, the same output we saw earlier. So everything is done, Ansible is run, and I didn't time it exactly, but I think Terraform took about 5 minutes, and then Ansible took about 10 minutes. So the whole thing was 15 to get the services deployed. All right, the web UI should be good to go now. I will highlight, right-click to copy, and then paste it into my browser. Your connection isn't private, that's okay, that's because we're using a secure server, we're using a secure web proxy, but we use a self-signed certificate. And that means our browser doesn't know if it should trust it or not. The connection is still encrypted. I'll hit continue. The username is ncadmin. That's the admin default user for Nextcloud. And then the password is the password we set in our vars file. Mine was changeme1a. Okay, we're logged in. Let me close this out and showcase a few features. First up, files. I want to show the cloud storage. If we click cloud storage, anything you store here is held in Google's cloud or object storage, right? So that's the infinitely scalable cloud storage, similar to AWS S3 buckets, if you're familiar with those. The storage costs are significantly lower than using a hard drive space on your instance. And there's no limit to the amount. And if you remember from our vars file, we set up our instance to use 30 gigs. That was the size of the hard drive. So if you want to exceed 30 gigs or you have a lot more files than that, I would suggest using cloud storage, which goes directly to Google's object storage bucket. Also, we have Talk, which is a plugin that's just installed. It's a nice feature to have. You can use this for web conferencing and chat on your Nextcloud platform. So it's kind of nice. You have your own web conferencing. I'll show that. So you can create a conversation. We'll call it test, allow guests to join via link, and password protect it. We'll add ourselves to the conversation. It's ready to go, and we can start a call. It would use my webcam and have audio, etc. So that's kind of nice. Kind of like Skype or something along those lines. What else do we have? Only Office integration. So this is really cool. So I will hit the plus and go to Document, Test Doc, I'll name it. And you'll notice it pops open the Only Office tab. I can create a document. Fairly well featured. It's automatically saving to Nextcloud, and it has things like formatting, collaboration with others. You can share it through this. You could do spell check, that sort of thing. So you can see there. So it's fairly fully featured, and it comes with more than just document editing. I believe it does like things like spreadsheets, etc. So that's really nice. And if I go back to files, we can see the document is there. That about wraps it up. Feel free to edit Nextcloud to your heart's content. Okay, I do want to showcase maintenance. Super important, how to keep your system up to date, or at least your containers up to date. I've got the Terraform output here, which has the instructions for that. The very first one is update containers / Ansible rerun instructions. So we'll follow through there's 3 steps, and we'll follow, this is the first one. We need to SSH to the instance. Fairly simple. And then next, actually before I run the next command, which removes the containers, I want to show them. And I'll go through these real quick. Oh, someone's got fireworks outside. So we have the Only Office container, that's how we edit our documents. We have the web proxy, that's how we get secure web browsing to our instance in our web browser. We have the Nextcloud instance, that's the Nextcloud service. We have, oh, it's not the last one, MariaDB. So this is the third party. This is actually published by a group called Linux Server, or linuxserver.io. By the way, check them out. That is their website. Oh, there's some more fireworks. We'll keep going. So linuxserver.io, they publish a whole bunch of different containers. They make some really great ones. They also make a Nextcloud one, though I chose the official for this project. But MariaDB is used by Nextcloud to store information. And then we have finally Minio or Minio, which is the storage gateway. This allows Nextcloud to talk to Google Cloud Storage. There is an S3 API kind of limitation. That's what Nextcloud uses to talk to object storage in the cloud. Google does implement the S3 API, but I've had kind of poor experience with it. Some things weren't possible to do. I was getting error messages in Nextcloud about using Google's storage. So we use Minio or Minio to implement it the right way. And this is perfect, free and open source software, really cool stuff. All right, so that's all of the containers. I do suggest updating these at least, every 2 months or so, something like that. Or if there's a big security vulnerability, keep yourself apprised of what's going on. There's a big firework. All right. All right, so the next step is to remove the containers. I've never had this before. Let me run this. Oh, and there is an update. I fixed it in the repo. There we go. You won't need to edit that real quick. I just had to do that. All right, and then finally we reapply the Ansible playbook with the custom variables. So this will restart the Ansible project, or the Ansible playbook rather, and it will create the containers for us with the latest versions. This is really nice. So we'll let that run. This will run in the background. You can watch it. This uses systemd, which is a component of Linux, to reinstall. So I will run systemctl status and then the name of the service. So I'll copy that name. You could also tail the log, and we'll do that in just a second. So here we go. We can see that the service is running. It's doing things. It's reinstalling all of the necessary components and containers. If we tail var log CloudOffice, we can see it's going through and setting it back up. So we'll give that just a bit, and I will be back. Ansible is done, everything is good, and if we run that same command, I'll Control-C out of the tail, sudo docker ps, we can see that the containers are up and running. And like before, failed equals 0, everything is good to go. I'm gonna exit out. That about wraps it up. Okay, our containers are done, our services have been updated. So we've gone through deployment, we've gone through keeping things up to date. The final thing that I'm going to do is destroy the project. I don't need this project anymore. We can use Terraform to destroy it. Just like we ran Terraform Apply, Terraform destroy with the var file, gcp.tf vars. And Terraform will output a plan to destroy everything. I will type in yes, I am done with this tutorial, and it will destroy. That's about it, everyone. If you have questions, comments, ideas, reach me on Discord, link in the description of this video, and on GitHub. You could also open a GitHub issue if you find a bug or have some improvement you'd like to see made. I think that's about it. You could leave a YouTube comment as well. That's fine too. Thank you very much and have a great day.